Order. First item we have is a request for bill introduction. Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is RS 2522. This bill proposes the consolidation of early childhood services under the Kansas Office of Early Childhood, including the Children's Cabinet, the Child Care Licensing, Home Visitation, and other services. The bill amends statutes related to the Children's Cabinet and creates new sections for daycare licensing and regulations under the office.
Without objection, we'll accept any objections. Seeing none. Any other bills? Seeing none, we'll start off here with budget report outs. Committee on Transparency and Ethics, Senator McGinn, Board of Nursing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Board of Nursing submits a revised estimate of $4.3 million, all from special revenue funds. It's an increase of the $225,000, and it's because of the federal funds through the American Rescue Plan. The governor concurs with the agency, and the committee concurs with the governor's recommendation. And that's 24, and on 25, again, they request $4 million from special revenue funds, and this increase is due to the agency's enhancement request for $66,400 to fund the state employee pay increases for 25. Governor concurs with the agency's revised estimate for 25, and the subcommittee agrees with the governor's recommendation.
Any questions? Seeing none, you might make a motion.
Thank you. I make a motion to approve the Board of Nursing 24 and 25 budget.
Have a motion. We have a second by Senator Alley. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will have the Kansas Board of Pharmacy. Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The agency requests a revised estimate of $4.3 million, all from special revenue funds. And this is less than the 24 approved amount. The decrease is attributable to a decrease in expected expenditures for attorney fees and computer maintenance and services. In addition to 24 approved amount, included funds for new passenger vehicle no longer needed in 24. The decreases were partially offset by the increase in salary and wages of the pharmacists employed in the agency's investigation program to the national average. Governor concurs with the agency for 2024, and the Senate committee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 24. So 25, the agency has a revised estimate, $4.1 million from special revenue funds. This increase, or this is a all funds increase of $228,800, or 6% above 2025, but a decrease of $261,900 and below the 24 estimate. The increase is primarily attributed to the agency's enhanced requests for funds to continue the pay increase implemented in the 23 legislature, and new FTE in the compliance division, and an increase in the agency's hospitality fund. The governor recommends expenditures of $4.1 million, all from special revenue funds for 25. This is a decrease of $500 below the agency's revised request due to the governor not recommending an increase in the hospitality expenditures. The subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendation for 2025.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve 24 and 25 of the Kansas Board of Pharmacy.
Have a motion, second by Senator Fagg. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Next, we have the Kansas State Board of Healing Arts. Agency requests $7.3 million from special revenue funds, and 67 positions for 24, same amount approved in 23. However, there are changes in the expenditure category. The revised estimate includes an increase of $37,800 in salaries and wages, largely due to the increased expenditures for employee pay and employer contributions to Social Security. This increase is partially offset by a decrease of $32,000 in contractual services for computer programming services and decreased expenditures for office supplies. Governor concurs with the agency's request, and the subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendation. For 25, again, the agency requests $7.4 million, all special revenue funds, 68 FTEs for 25. This is an increase of $200,000 or 2.8% above the agency's 25 approved amount. The increase is entirely due to the agency's enhancement request to fund the state employee pay plan for 25 that was approved in 23. And they add one FTE position for 25. The position will be an administrative specialist in the licensing program. Governor concurs with the agency's request in 25. Committee concurs with the governor's recommendation in 25.
Questions on 24 or 25? Seeing none, Senator may make your motion.
Make a motion to approve the Kansas Board of Healing Arts 24 and 25 budget.
I have a motion, second by Senator Fagg. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, we'll have the Board of Technical Professions.
Our last fee board report, I hope, I think. Anyway, this is the Board of Technical Professions. Agency requests a rise estimate of $822,700. And the FTE positions in 2024, 5 FTE positions, same amount approved in 23. Governor concurs with the agency's 24 revised estimate, and the subcommittee concurs with the governor for 24. Next, we'll go to 25. Agency requests $800 all from the Technical Professions Fund, 5 FTE positions. This is an increase of $13,900 above the approved amount from 23. It's primarily to account for the increase in the expenditure limitation that was inadvertently omitted by the legislative pay in 23. And this plan does not represent a substantial change from salary adjustments approved in 23. Governor concurs with the agency's 25 estimate, and the subcommittee concurs with the governor's recommendation.
Questions? Seeing none, Senator may make your motion.
Make a motion to approve the Board of Technical Professions budget for 24 and 25.
Motion, second by Senator Fagg. Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Senator McGinn. Committee, before we move on to our next item, I just need to make an announcement. Senator Alley, Senator Clays, Senator Erickson, and Senator Pittman will be doing the executive subcommittee meeting at noon in room 218 North, and general government subcommittee at noon in 548 is Senator Fagg, Senator Kirshen, Senator Petty, and myself. So just wanted to make that announcement so everybody knew where they were at. Next, we'll have a hearing on SCR 1615, a concurrent resolution rejecting the rates of compensation for members of the legislature set by the Legislative Compensation Commission. We'll start out with a staff overview. We'll have David Weiss, Office of the Revisers of Statute. David, welcome, committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, committee. Senate Concurrent Resolution 1615 rejects the rates of compensation and salary for members of the legislature that were set by the Legislative Compensation Commission in the commission's order dated October 19, 2023, and then which were published in the journals of both the House and the Senate on January 8, 2024, and provides that the rates of compensation and salary for members that are prevailing for the current session, 2024 legislative session, will remain in effect going forward. So if you might remember from last year, there was Senate Bill 229 that established the Legislative Compensation Commission. It's now codified at KSA 463102. I've attached a copy of the statute just for your information so you can look at the membership of the commission and the charge and the duties. The commission is required to establish and submit to the legislature rates of compensation and salaries for legislators that would commence with the term of office coinciding with the first day of the 2025 legislative session. Within 30 days of the commencement of the 2024 session, the legislature may allow those rates to take effect by taking no action, or they can reject the rates by adopting a concurrent resolution. In such concurrent resolution, the legislature may include a requirement the Legislative Compensation Commission meet within 14 days of the adoption of the resolution and consider and set another rate of compensation for potential review and rejection by the legislature. Senate's concurrent resolution 1615 does not include such a requirement. It is just a strict rejection of the rates that were set by the Compensation Commission. And so with the commencement of the 2024 legislative session taking place January 8th, 2024, that 30-day clock started running, and then there would be, so the legislature would have to reject those rates on or before February 7th of 2024. I can stand for any questions.
Thank you, David. Questions? Seeing none. Thank you, David. Next, we'll have Dylan Deere, Legislative Research Department. Dylan, welcome committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Dylan Deere. I'm with the Legislative Research Department. You should be receiving copies of the Commission report right now. The Commission report includes the Commission's recommendations, as well as supplemental materials, which provide additional background data on the implementation of those recommendations. At the discretion of the chair and of the rest of the committee, I know Chairman Hutton is here and ready to brief those recommendations and answer questions. I make myself available for any technical questions, but I would defer to the chairman unless you'd like to have me walk through them.
Did anyone have any questions for Dylan? If not, we'll just, if we have questions come up.
I'll be right back here.
Thank you. Next, we will have Mark Hutton, former representative and Chairman of the Legislative Compensation Commission. Welcome to committee, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tell people I'm a recovering politician. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, my name is Mark Hutton, and it was my privilege to chair the Legislative Compensation Commission that was created by House Substitute for Senate Bill 229. At the request of Chairman Billinger, I'm here today to provide an overview of the Commission's process, as well as the rationale used to make the determination required by this legislation, and of course, to take questions. You have my written testimony today, so I'm not going to bore you with reading it, so I'll just kind of touch on some of the other areas. As chairman of the commission, I felt it was important to provide a clear audit trail of our discussions and actions so future commissions and legislatures could see how we arrived at our determination. As such, the report outlines our work in detail, and my comments today reflect that same information. As an overview, the commission considered what to base the compensation on, how it would be calculated, if it was to be indexed, how. We also evaluated the impact of our determination on CAPERS. We considered the treatment of the per diem allowance, looked at leadership pay, and considered a stipend based on district size. I'll speak briefly about each of these areas. There's been considerable discussion about including the per diem in the salary discussion. To be clear, the commission considered per diem as a reimbursement, not as wages or compensation. Per diem is a common method used by government and businesses to reimburse employees for their travel expenses required for the performance of a job. The IRS does not consider per diem to be wages, so they're not taxed as such. For the Kansas legislature, the per diem is determined annually by the Department of Administration based on federal government guidelines. Legislators have different needs and circumstances that affect the impact their per diem allowance has on their personal finances. It is for all of these reasons that the commission decided not to consider per diem reimbursement in our determination, and I would urge you to do the same. As noted in our report, the commission started with the decision to use the Bureau of Labor Standards for the average wage of a public employee in Kansas, We called it the BLS. More information on that BLS report is provided in our report in detail. The BLS data is updated in May of every year and lags about a year and a half behind. This means we are using 2023 data as the basis of compensation starting in January 1st of 2025. The Commission considered other indexes and approaches, but landed on the BLS because of its historical consistency and reliability, and it cannot be influenced by the legislature or the administration. Since data is reported annually, it also provided a built-in index that the Commission decided to use with a 3-year rolling average to smooth out the impact of annual changes. Using this data, we determined the average state employee's wage in 2023 would be $60,238. The Commission then determined how this salary would be adjusted based on the expected job duties and time commitments a legislature was expected to make. After looking at these requirements, the Commission decided that 100% of a legislator's time would be required in the first 5 months of the year, and 50% the remaining 7 months. This resulted in a weighted percentage of 70.83% that, when applied to the $60,238 salary, resulted in an adjusted salary of $667 that we rounded up to $43,000. When compared to this, we then compared this compensation to like jobs such as a Kansas school teacher, who, according to the State Board of Education, makes an average annual salary of $65,147 for approximately the same time commitment. Once we arrived at the preliminary determination, the Commission requested that KPERS test it for its impact on legislators and the KPERS system. The result of that discussion was that we decided to pay 7.75% of the salary in the first month to take advantage of the annualization formula, negating any potential windfall that would result from the increase. Mr. Conroy's full analysis is included as an appendix in our report. We then addressed leadership pay using the same percentage of salary increases that they currently experienced. Our attention then turned to consideration for special sessions and interim committee assignments, where the Commission decided on a daily rate structure that made up the difference between what members would be paid while in session versus out of session. There was extensive discussion around the concept of providing a stipend for legislators with large districts, such as states like Montana does. After various proposals, it was decided to remove this from our consideration, suggesting that the legislature consider this in the future. I would note that the Commission began and completed our work by taking public comments to allow the public and legislators the opportunity to express their thoughts before we finalized our determination. At the initial meeting, the Senate President, the Speaker of the House, and a representative of the Wichita Chamber spoke. At the final meeting, we only had one speaker, a citizen from Overland Park expressing support, and one written testimony with personal information blacked out expressing opposition. Mr. Chairman and members of this commission, this commission's purpose was to propose compensation for legislative members that would maintain a citizens' legislature, encourage balanced representation across economic and social demographic sectors, therefore encouraging participation across a broader range of Kansans. We wanted it to foster a higher level of retention in the legislature but at the same time, discourage development of professional politicians. While this determination does represent a significant increase, I believe it falls short of compensating members for the service to our state. Who in this position hasn't questioned the sacrifice that one makes when serving, especially after witnessing a fellow member experience a life-changing tragedy that caused everyone in this body to stop and consider the true cost on their lives, families, and careers? I submit to you that this sacrifice is sufficient and that serving our great state should not include a financial penalty that drives our members away, or worse yet, prevents them from even considering the job. In their final comments, the commission members were adamant that a legislator's service to our state should not be judged by the financial sacrifice they make. I did not approach this responsibility with the intention of arriving at a political solution. While the commission reviewed current compensation, we had little discussion about the size of increase, choosing instead to reflect on what it should be. My goal as chairman was to arrive at a unanimous and bipartisan determination based on full transparency, sound data, and sound policy. And I believe we did just that. I thank you for your time today, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mark. Great explanation. Mark, first off, I want to thank you and your committee. You did a lot of work, a lot of research here, and we really appreciate that. Questions for Mark? Senator Pittman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mark. I do believe you took the politics out of this, and really, it looks like you did a very good analytic job and used different rates. One could question some of the assumptions, but I think that it was a great first try and second try. My question is on the CAPERS piece. In Appendix 2, page 2, we look down and we see the difference between CAPERS 2 and CAPERS 3 for members. And if I'm gonna read this out, it looks like CAPERS 2, the baseline benefit, annual benefit's about 14, let's just call it 14,800 a year. And then in CAPERS 3, the average benefit is 7,248. Straight up, just because of the difference in those programs, that's the difference in benefit is to the members. Is that correct?
That is correct. It was, and I may be out on ahead of my skis, but I believe that there's not very many people left in the CAPERS 2. And Alan Conroy is here. But part of our discussion was the overall impact. And since there are essentially 3 levels of CAPERS, we had to kind of look at a dollar average impact. And at the end of the day, our decision was to choose the 7.75% in the first month. And that resulted in overall a neutral effect on the CAPERS plan as much as we could, balancing that. Then again, I would refer for more detail on that to Mr. Conyer.
I appreciate that. That answers the question. It's just a stark difference in benefits between a CAPERS 2 and CAPERS 3, as you can appreciate. My second question really has to be on the leadership pay. Being in the minority party is tough all the way around here in the state of Kansas, let's just say that. And it becomes even more tough when we look at our numbers. And we see that the Senate President and our Speaker, it's fine if they get more money, and the Vice President, Speaker Pro Tem. Then we get down to the Assistant Majority. I think it's the Assistant Majority Leader, is that right? They get compensation?
They don't, I don't believe they currently get it. And what we did was followed, we had discussion about the assistant majority and minority leaders and decided to stay the course with what the current compensated positions would be, and leave it up to the Legislative Coordinating Council to decide if there would be any other additional compensation.
I'm sorry, it must be a typo here because it says Assistant Majority Leader on page 3 of the report. So it must not be, must be a typo in that because it says that they get a 33% increase here.
Let me find it.
I'm sure that's wrong. What's that? Assistant Majority Leader?
What page, please?
Page 3 of the report.
Page 3.
So it sounds like the Assistant Majority Leader does, but the Assistant Minority Leader does not. In fact,
I'm mistaken. We did, it did get in the report. Our discussions was that it hadn't been traditionally been reimbursed. But I do see it made it into report, so.
I mean, if you look at that, it looks like 2 minority leaders across both the House and the Senate get leadership pay. And I can't even count out how many, when we include the appropriations and the Ways and Means chairman, get pay from the majority party across there. It just seems a little bit heavy-handed towards the majority party. I don't think it's political, but I think the minority party, if we're going to pay the assistant majority leader, I mean, how could we not put a little extra compensation in for the assistant minority leaders as well? Or even on the House appropriations and Ways and Means, look at the ranking there, because, you know, we cover a lion's share of the meetings between the 2 of us across this committee. And I'm certainly not that ranking on this committee. So it did cause me some pause. I find it to be a little heavy-handed. I didn't know, if we're not political, what that is. I don't know.
Yeah. So I want to make sure I understand kind of where you're coming from. Are you suggesting that that the ranking member on Ways and Means, ranking minority member on Ways and Means should be compensated in some level?
When you're
That was not, we did not discuss that.
when you follow the logic of who you've given increases in leadership pay to,
I
yeah,
think that's fair.
the assistant minority leader should also, and the assistant on these Ways and Means and appropriations should be included in that if we're going to go down that route. It just seems balanced and fair and non-political.
That, frankly, to my recollection, was not ever brought up in our discussion on leadership pay, that we would go down to ranking members of committees, or other than,
But how about across to, not just down? Is that
fair enough.
Okay.
Well, but, yeah, I don't want to argue with you, but we have, I mean, we're not compensating anybody other than the Ways and Means chair at a committee level. That was the only, and that was traditional. That was kind of cooked into how the legislature's been compensated over years. I'm not saying you're wrong, and certainly, in retrospect, I wish we'd had the conversation, but we didn't.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Mark, for being here. So overall, the commission basically looked at the structure we have and found that structure, according to this commission, to be manageable and valid. And because you mentioned distance or size, you mentioned size, and at first I thought size. So you were referring to, so if a colleague of mine in the Senate has a greater distance across the state for their district, as my colleague right here does, to encompass, to reach that number that we're taking in for senators to have, then they should be, that was a thought, that they should have higher compensation, because you saw that in Montana?
Well, there are a number of states that include a stipend for the size of district in anticipation of the additional time, primarily in travel. And Senator Billinger's district was kind of the poster child for that discussion. It's huge. But at the end of the day, the commission decided that that was just had the potential for being too controversial, and decided to set it off with the recommendation that perhaps the legislature would consider that in future in future legislation. I would also point out that there is a major change in philosophy with this determination, in that we're not doing a daily rate. We're doing a salary. So if the legislative session runs long, it's on them. There's no extra pay for going long on a special or on a session. Now, if they're called to a special session, there is a stipend in that. But we wanted to incentivize getting done. And there were about 8 members on this committee that had served, and they felt strongly that we needed to make sure that this determination didn't incentivize long sessions.
Thank you.
Other questions? Senator Pittman.
Just curious, because everybody assumes that the senators make more money than the House of Reps,
Yeah,
because we do cover four times the area or population.
yep.
Was that ever brought up during the commission as a
No.
possibility?
No, we did not look at, and again, we didn't want to create 2 classes. I understand what you're saying, but I think in my mind, that would have opened the door for some
Interesting.
disgruntled people, let's put it that way.
President Masterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually had one question already answered. I told someone that it was my understanding there was no significant change to capers, that you were working around that, and was called a liar to my face. And so you confirmed that I was not. It was a truthful statement. Could you just, and then follow up on Senator Pittman's question, the perception that there was some, I don't know, partisanship or heavy-handedness. Could you, just refresh who was our committee, who all was on the committee?
Sure, I can run down that list. We had, of course, Anthony Hensley, Mark Kars, myself, Clark Schultz, Senator Abrams, gentleman Kevin Timmons out of the Overland Park area, Tom Hawk, Ed McKechnie, and Kelly Arnold from Wichita.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I actually didn't watch the final vote. Was there objection by any of, like, the former minority leader or McKechnie
None
or any of
whatsoever.
them?
And like I mentioned it at the beginning of my testimony, it was a unanimous approval of this determination.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator McGinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question for Alan. I'm trying to remember when I first sat down to figure out my capers plan, and the gal explaining to me that your capers is based on $38,000. And I was like, this looks like fuzzy math, and that's exactly what I told her. And then it was later explained to me why they do that. What is that number today?
And of course, you're right.
So
when
just for everybody to know,
And there are,
it's a calculation assuming you have a year-round salary.
that is correct. And you can include in that just that daily compensation. You can include the non-session expenses. And you can also include then the non-session and the session expenses and all of that. So legislators first get to pick whether or not they choose to belong, and then second, what level do they want to contribute? And whatever level they can decide to join at, they make contributions on that. But if a legislator currently picks everything's in and annualized, the current annualized purpose for capers, of course not for pay, but for capers purposes, it's right at $100,000.
Oh, it is, okay. I must have picked a discount plan.
That's right, and as the chair is reminding me, the commission worked very hard, and that's why the recommendation that's only the January pay. So this capers is not impacted. It's almost a mathematical thing, like the capers 3 example, it would be, and if it was all in, $6 more a month compared to the current one. Capers 2 member, it's $12 more a month. And really, it's almost a rounding. The commission worked very hard to make it as revenue neutral as possible to the CAPERS system.
Other questions? Seeing none, well, thank you, Mark. We appreciate you and your committee and all your hard work, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today and answer questions. And I think you've answered some of them questions that folks had, and so thank you again.
Not a problem, and it was an honor to serve. So thank you for your service.
Thank you. Committee, that ends our work for today, so we are adjourned.
Was that a hearing?
Pardon me?
Were you allowing testimony on that?
Yes. I didn't have anyone else on the list. Was you on the list?
I apologize. I had missed the, I had looked on Friday and I didn't see that deal, but I wanted to come up here and make sure that I could at least ask for an opportunity to speak. And then if not, if I could, then I could go ahead and put some remarks on paper.
You know, I'll allow you to speak, being it was short span here, but keep it short, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Nicholas Reinecker from Inman, Kansas. Mr. Chairman, committee, thank you for allowing me to speak. It's an honor to do so. I think that I come up here about 7 or 8, maybe 10 times a year. I make $33,000 a year, and it costs me about $230, $250 each time I come up here in food, fuel, and that's without motel room or anything else. And so I'm just, you know, when you stand up and you affirm or say your oath to God and say you're going to sacrifice for God, family, and country, it's not supposed to be a job. It should be a passion and not a convenience. And I don't know where the other 3 million people are in the state of Kansas right now, if they're worrying about beer, football, and state gambling. But I wanted to make sure that I come here and say, I want you to be a citizen legislature, not succumb to pressures of and conveniences of being, have a job, and then you get entanglements with the whole system under this dome with lobbyists and everything like that. So I would ask that you would reject this pay raise from a citizen standpoint. And I thank you for allowing me to speak very much.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Was there anyone else in the audience that was not listed? Seeing none, we're going to close our hearing. And committee, if there's any other questions or discussion, seeing none, we are adjourned.